Nice, I got it. Oh. All right, welcome everybody. I'm Ben Goldberg, the president here at Marin Builders. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Remodelers Forum. The co-chairs these days are Brad Hubble and Rob Walker. They are our co-chairs for this wonderful group. Today we are discussing a roundtable type discussion for incorporating deconstruction and reclaimed materials into your projects, whether it's small projects, large projects, everything in between. And we have some wonderful, talented speakers here today. We're going to start off with Green Lennox. They're going to start off and give us a little bit of a presentation. And then we're going to take it into a little bit of a lightning round where you get a few different people's opinions. And ideally, our goal is to have about 20-25 minutes to open it up for questions. So anybody on Zoom, please feel free. I have Brad and Rob there, so you can put in questions into the chat channel, and we will make sure to get those questions answered. Anybody in the audience, feel free to write it down, and we are going to have a full open discussion at the end. Okay, sound great? Let's get started. Nicole, take us away. Introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Nicole Ty. I'm the CEO of Green Links, and my partner Brandon Boogie here, he's the COO. I kind of run the retail store for Green Links. We're a deconstruction and a reuse facility. And Brandon runs the deconstruction division, but we wear a lot of hats. So today we're going to talk to you about incorporating deconstruction and reclaimed materials into projects specifically so that you can kind of figure out the process. I'll go into the whys and the hows, and then Brandon's going to go into like the super details on like actually how do you hire a deconstruction contractor? What does it look like when you're on the job site with them? What does a deconstruction project look like? And we'll take it away. Okay, that's the very end.
Oh, of course. I told you I have technical issues. I wanted to start here. Here we go.
Okay, so I thought I'm not sure if everybody knows what deconstruction is, so I'm just going to talk about it a little bit really quickly. So it's the process of dismantling a structure to maximize the reuse potential of the materials within it. So it's not for recycling. It's not for, you know, hauling it off fast. It's to get materials that can then go back into the community and be reused. And I'll talk a little bit about reuse and what that means as well. So some people call it construction in reverse or unbuilding. There's kind of a bunch of different types. I'll talk about that. You can go to the next slide. So there's a gamut of different things that we do within deconstruction. We do full deconstruction where we take an entire house down to the foundation. We do full interior guts where we take everything off on the inside, sometimes even the skin off the outside. We do soft strips. We just do specific components of a house. Say you hire a demo contractor, but the timing didn't work out. We can come in and try to get something in a day. We'll get a full truckload in a day. We do outbuilding removal, and we even do garden salvage. We'll salvage plants. If they're beautiful, we'll salvage them, and it works. So what is deconstruction? Deconstruction is not demolition. So no bulldozers, no wrecking balls, only excavators to remove the foundation, the concrete portion. And demolition really limits reusability. Basically, once you demo a building, they roll over it with their tracks, and everything just kind of becomes splinters. So not only is it not reusable, a lot of times it's really not recyclable either. So Palo Alto just passed an ordinance so that you have to deconstruct a building and separate the materials, and it prevents you from rolling over all the good stuff. So I'll talk about that in a sec. Deconstruction results in a tractor trailer load of just lumber alone. We have a lot of other loads that we do of reusables, from kitchen cabinets to doors and things like that. Generally, it's 50 to 70% reuse of the weight of the project, and a total diversion rate of 75 to 95%. It's required to do 65% in California, and so we get above that rate. And some cities require above that rate. So how do you incorporate it into your project? You plan early. That's the key to this. Although we we do get last minute calls and we'll come out if we have the time. So including your specifications, your RFPs, and you know, whatever documents you send out to potential subcontractors, especially deconstruction or demolition contractors, they'll tell you whether they can do it or not. There are some demolition contractors that do both. They might not necessarily advertise it, but we are a deconstruction contractor and will sometimes do demolition in the course of doing deconstruction, but we don't do demolition. So the second thing you want to do is contact deconstruction firms. Like I said, you can do demolition firms, just do a little research on them. You want to talk to the clients of the project about donation benefits. So there's a couple of different ways that we make it economically viable to do deconstruction. Some cases, like when it comes to an interior gut or a soft strip, things like that, it's hand demolition anyways. So we generally can do the same price as demolition, but with full house deconstruction, we're a lot more. And so there's a federal program called the IRS that provides a tax deduction for clients to donate the materials to nonprofit. We work with a couple of nonprofits to make that happen. And so it offsets the cost. So it works really well for people that are high income folks, or usually the people that are demolishing houses anyways. So it doesn't work so well for people that are on a fixed income or people that are retired, unless they have really large savings. So make sure you make time in the schedule. Deconstruction takes 1 week per 1,000 square feet for a full deconstruction. And you know, when it comes to soft stripping and interior stuff, it's pretty much the same time. Demolition, deconstruction, when it's just remodeling, is all going to be about the same time. We're just a lot more careful and we break less stuff. And then check the benefits that you might get from your local permit agency. They might give you extra time on the permit for doing it. They might even let you start deconstruction months earlier than they would allow you to start demolition. I'm actually working really hard with Marin County code officials to make that happen. So it would give us priority over demolition. And then you have all those carrying costs that get shrunk a little bit more because you have the property ready to go when you get that permit. So you also want to schedule a walk with a qualified reuse group that assesses the material. So there's only a few of us that do this. Green Links, we're kind of all in one. So we're a reuse facility and a deconstruction company. There's only one other company like us, and they're in the South Bay. And they don't do quite what we do. They're a little bit more niche. There's the reuse people, and there's a lot of other companies that do it. But generally in Marin, we're kind of the only game in town next to the reuse people. I don't really know anybody else. There's other deconstruction contractors or demolition contractors, but we're the only ones really. So, and then you also want to get in touch with an appraiser. So like I said, with the tax deduction, you can take $5,000 on your own, and just like when you go to Goodwill. Anything over that, which generally these projects, depending on the size of the house, they can be anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000 in terms of evaluation of the materials that get donated. That's for like 250 for like a mansion with gold toilets. And we did have a toilet that was like what, $15,000, $18,000. So yeah, it's crazy. It gets crazy. So you want to talk to an appraiser early on, get them involved with us. We'll usually just kind of hand it off to an appraiser and let you know, and talk to your client a little bit about it, and we'll help with that process. And TRP would also, the reuse people will also help you with that. Then you want to schedule your walk. You review the deconstruction bid, and the key is to review the deconstruction bid and compare it to the appraisal value. And then show your client and see what the benefits are. Because a lot of times demolition is just going to cost you money. It's straight cost. Deconstruction, you might actually be able to zero it out and have it be, but it's going to take them a year, but it takes you a year to build it anyway. So, and then it contacts us or the appraiser with any questions. So we have this thing called wood-ageddon right now, where wood is just, we have way too much demolition happening and nowhere to put the wood. So we're really excited about the potential for reuse to get even bigger. We just need to get the cities and the counties and the state to understand what we're doing. And so we're doing it. We're in a lot of different groups that are trying to make policy happen. There's about in the Bay Area, I have a bunch of colleagues that we work with, and we have a group I'll talk to you about it at the end. We're spread out all over the 9 counties. The amount of reuse facilities is unfortunately going down. So there's about 10 of us right now. We're all at capacity, meaning we're all full. There's no regional plan yet for what we do. There are ordinances for deconstruction in Palo Alto and Portland, Oregon. There's also a couple more that are popping up around the country, but those are the 2 on the West Coast. Belvedere and Portola Valley have really high reuse rates within their kind of their waste audit goals. Belvedere gives you a little bit of time, so they're the only one in Marin that is doing that right now. I don't think it's enough time, but they give you time. And then San Francisco and Oakland are really working hard on their deconstruction ordinances right now. They're not quite in place yet. And like I said, Marin, I'm working with the code officials to try to get it so that it's easy and simple to do. We don't want to make it any more complex than things are already. So okay, what is reuse? It's kind of my pet peeve, the difference between reuse and recycling. So you'll see me kind of cringe when people say recycling. We don't do recycling, although we have to do it obviously for metals, but so we do within our industry, we kind of straddle 2 industries. We straddle construction and we straddle the waste industry. And so within that industry, reuse is, part of the 3 R's. There's waste reduction, reuse, and recycling. And waste reduction is what you're supposed to do first, reuse second, and recycling's last resort. Landfill is not supposed to happen in 0 waste, but it's still happening. So upcycling is a part of reuse, repair, reusables. So those are things that you probably do on a regular basis. If anybody has like, a reusable cup, you might upcycle things just like that TV into a cat bed. You repair your car, your phones, things like that. Then there's also, you can make furniture out of reclaimed wood. You can make finishes. So a trim package, you can do outbuildings. And we go to the next slide. You can also do it as is. So that was a shed that we reclaimed in Bolinas, and we literally put it on a forklift and brought it to the neighbor. Then this is also kind of the same thing. We panelized a guest house and we brought it in panels to the neighbor. And so that was really great. We deconstructed a house in Bolinas and we brought almost half the house to neighbors. So that's kind of the result of deconstruction. That's all reclaimed lumber right there, coming off of a job site, off of a house being deconstructed. So structural use of reclaimed lumber can happen. Oregon allows it in their code, and we're kind of working with California to make it more explicit in the code. But it does allow reclaimed lumber as long as it has a stamp on it. So if the lumber is stamped, it can be reused for structural purposes. It's a little bit difficult to shoot with guns and with nail guns, but in other, for beams and other structural uses where, you're not shooting 100 miles a minute, it's usable. You want to check with your engineer, making sure that they're on board with that. A lot of times they love it because usually reclaimed wood is number 1, which means it's much more structurally sound than number 2, which is generally what you get these days. And then unstamped lumber can be reused, especially super old, like 1800s, early 1900s wood is not going to be stamped. So then you call the engineer and they'll grade it or they'll approve it. So this is the type of thing you can use it for. And it has a lot of benefits. It's structurally more dense. You can use full size wood instead of like PSLs or, you know, any kind of engineered lumber. So you can actually show off the beauty of the wood. You can either leave it with its patina and its character, or you can, you know, plane it down to show the pure, like raw wood below. It has a lot of tight grain, saw marks, things like that. You can use it in restoration projects where you're looking for, you might even just be looking for trim, but in terms of like, you know, structurally trying to replace an old beam, it's hard these days. It's getting tougher and tougher for us too. So, and it's a little less labor. You don't have to like beat it with chains, things like that to make it look old. So how do you incorporate reclaimed? We have 3 great speakers today that are going to talk to you about what they do and how they incorporate reclaimed or how they pull out reclaimed. And you want to design and install to avoid basically that. So that was a project in Belvedere, and it was just like weeks of trying to figure out how to reclaim. They were just trying to take up the flooring and put new flooring on. The entire house was hydronic heating, and so they had to rip the whole system out and redo the whole system because somebody had glued the pecs and the subfloor and like everything was glued to everything, and we couldn't even get it out. It was a nightmare, a total nightmare. So try to use silicone if you can instead of glue. It comes off wonderfully. And don't use it in excess. Anything in excess, nails in excess. I mean, nailing patterns these days are so much harder. We basically, after 1980, we just are kind of throw up our hands in frustration because the nails are just out of control. And things from the 1990s have to come apart because they're so shoddily made in comparison to something that was made in the 1920s, which is still strong and true, and has 5 nails versus 100. So avoid anything that's complex or has composite construction. So the less materials is more. Use natural materials. Try to use bolts if you can. You know, take a couple extra minutes to think about, you know, how would you bolt something together instead of using all the crazy fasteners that we do these days? Go ahead. So I've talked about some of this. Why would you use deconstruction and why would you reuse? So, you know, it sets you as a builder apart from other builders that are out there if you incorporate it into your process. I think it's something that you could really upsell to clients and that would make you look unique, especially if you're trying to, you know, get out there as a green builder. It's super innovative. It's actually one of the really truly green parts of green building. You might be trying to meet new codes that are going to be coming up for LEED, if you're building a LEED house or a Green Point rated house, net zero or passive house. And then these days it's really hard to source materials. So heck, you know, ask us if we have it before you spend 6 months waiting for a door. Because we might just have it. Go ahead. So another reason to deconstruct and reuse is we only have one planet. Despite what, you know, economics would like us to believe that we just can't grow like we think we can. We only have so many, everything's finite on the planet. We can't just make more things. So demolishing one house is an entire lifetime of one person's waste. It's a lot of waste. And so basically when anyone demolishes a house, they're doubling the amount of waste that they create in their lifetime. And then, so next, Brandon's going to kind of talk to you about how to make deconstruction actually physically happen on their sites. And I'll let you take it away.
She does this more often than I do. I'm on the job. So bear with me.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into this.
I got into this actually moving from Oregon to Montana, and I had spent about 16 years of my life logging out in the woods in Oregon and Montana, and then got into excavation and was actually running big bulldozers and excavators smashing houses, and started seeing the value in the materials that I was throwing away every day, and thinking about the embodied energy that goes into those materials. And I had all the experience in the woods logging, and I know the hours and the danger and everything that goes into harvesting trees. And you follow that all the way from the forest to the mills and to the building material stores and the job site, and all the time it gets handled on the job, and all that embodied energy adds up.
Speak up a little bit.
So that I just started kind of reviewing all that in my head that I'd seen in my life, and started doing research on materials and homes and demolition a little bit more. The internet was getting a little bigger, and I just kind of started figuring out what I wanted to do. Salvaging materials and even recycling materials was better than just throwing them in the landfill. So it just kind of came full circle for me. Realized what we're doing is not right. So, been doing this for about 16 years now, and it's still my passion. I still love doing it. The physical part helps you sleep well, along with the thought of what you're doing. So yeah, so Nicole kind of already went over the services we offer. You know, we do have a lot of GCs that hire us, and homeowners hire us directly as well. We can too fast there. We do using some subcontractors to help us out these days. We'll cover that more in a little bit. We do the full structures from top to bottom. Like she said earlier, it's about 1,000 square feet a week. That takes anywhere from 8 to 15 people on a job site to pull down 1,000 square feet in a week. It employs a lot of people.
Yeah.
All the way to the reusing the material. So we'll do full strip outs of houses, get them all prepared for you, ready to go. So when you come in to start remodeling, there's no fasteners in the walls. There's no sheetrock left in the walls. It's a clean slate ready to go. And we do small remodels, companies take apart bathrooms. We do those every once in a while. Kitchens, outbuildings, like she showed, remove whole sheds or take them apart to kits and sell the kits at times. And then materials pickups is just, you know, other contractors or homeowners will call us and say, hey, we salvaged this, when you take it. And so we get some pictures from them, whether it's a text or an email, or go look at the job site, what they've salvaged, and we'll come pick the materials up, or they can actually bring them to our store and drop them off. Helping save more materials than what we can actually remove ourselves. So, and then the consulting part, deconstruction consulting, we'll work with contractors and homeowners and everything, preferably from the beginning before you start the project, to help you line out details if you want to do it yourself and how to do it. We come out and train crews how to salvage materials and be more efficient at it. And, what to do with those materials and what is worth salvaging and what's not. So a lot of times there's stuff that's really not worth the value and the time or the resources to salvage it. So unfortunately, I don't like to say that. There's those materials. So the walkthrough process, basically when you decide to contact Green Links or any other deconstruction company, this is how we do it. It's we'll come out and visit you at your site and establish the details of the job and what you want to get done, and go over the whole scope of work, every room, every detail that you want to happen on the job. And then we assess all the materials we're going to reclaim, what's good, what's not, what can maybe be donated if we're doing a donation route for the nonprofits and for tax deduction. we not only have our own stores and nonprofit we donate to, but then others, and you've got to know every facility is a little different in materials they want or accept, the conditions and that kind of stuff. So it's a trained eye to look at all of it and know what everybody takes and wants.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then we'll go over at the job site, or when we're talking, we'll go over the whole donation process and how it works. We typically, you can contact appraisers yourself and get them involved. Some people do before we even go to the job. Sometimes we get our jobs through the appraisers. But majority of the time, we're contacted by the GC or the homeowner, and we actually engage the appraiser on the job. We'll send them an appraisal request with a write-up of all the salvage materials we think we're going to be able to salvage. And we send them pictures of all the job walk, everything, every photo we can get, real estate links online to look at more stuff, square footages, all that good info goes to them. And then the appraiser will send the homeowner or the GC, if they're the homeowner's contact a proposal that shows their cost to do the appraisal work and the estimated value of the tax deduction. So it's an estimated value because you never know how it's all going to come out. Sometimes we find more things than what we initially listed and started out saying we were going to find, and sometimes some things break or just don't come out like they're supposed to. Or somebody put glue that we didn't see, so or there was 3 layers instead of 1.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then the bidding process, I prefer to get PDFs. Recently just started using House actually and paying for that program and doing all my takeoffs on there and setting up for the whole bidding process, so we can communicate through that now. Or the PDFs are always handy to have. You can definitely do a lot of the bids without PDFs as well, just taking measurements on jobs and getting a good eye for it. I've been doing it quite a few years now, so yeah, then I get your PDF, I send the scope of donation I was talking about to the appraisers, maybe email these questions if I have them. At that point, as I'm starting to wrap my head around the whole project and what's happening, where everything's going, a lot to think about. Like any proposal. The appraiser sends the client the information, and then with the value of materials and stuff, and then the other thing I like to get when I'm working on the proposal is hazardous report from you, if possible. Let us know if there's any asbestos and let me know what you're going to be doing with that. If you're having that abated, or if we need to hire a maintenance company, typically the contractor, the owner takes care of that part. Sometimes there's over excessive amounts of lead. The lead content's really high, so then we have to figure out how, if that's got to be abated by certified company, or if we can handle that. And then we're all lead certified through as well. So, we've started using more subs in the last couple of years, which is helping us out a lot. You see the roofers here, they're all harnessed in and doing their thing that they do every day. So that keeps our crew working more on the salvage materials and get efficient at what they do, and the roofers are efficient at what they do and licensed, and they pay the high workman's comp for being up there. So that keeps our workman's comp levels down, which can help keep our wages down. Because we don't do roofs every day, so it's best if I can have a sub doing that. We've got a demo company we're working with in San Francisco now that will travel around quite far. And so I can have them bid to come in and remove all the sheetrock. We did all the stucco on one of the last houses we did in San Francisco. So once again, just keeps our crew doing what we want to be doing and what we're good at. Insulation, call insulation companies, get insulation sucked out. Freon removal company that I work with that comes and drains AC units and stuff like that, so we can remove those. Try and do the right thing with all the materials we remove. Like, just cut lines on AC units. We call it Freon company. We pull all the fluorescent light bulbs out of the house before we start demoing light fixtures and all that kind of stuff. We take all those to the right facilities and recycle them where we can. And even though it costs on a lot of it, like we go through the lines and do it right. So the process getting on the job is, the first hour, maybe not day, I guess, is working, getting all the shut-offs taken care of, making sure breakers are shut off, the power lines are gone. If we're doing the whole house, we got temporary power for charging our batteries and running cords, shutting down water and figuring out the system. If it's a remodel, we got to figure out if we have to shut the water off or not, remove it. Looking at removing without shutting it down. Is somebody going to be in the house that night that we got to put shark plates on? All that part we got to assess when we're getting started. Is the abatement done? If the abatement's not done, sometimes we'll work with the abatement companies that are doing like the asbestos. They'll maybe come into the project and remove what is visible, and then we'll come in after they're done with that and open up walls and expose ducting and more asbestos for them. And then we leave for a day and they come back, or we divide off sections of the house and spread out and do our thing. So then we go after all the soft stripping of the house, and soft stripping is basically removing all non-structural items, cabinets, lights, doors, windows at some point. After the soft stripping, we'll maybe start if we're taking the whole house down, we'll have the roofers there while we're working on the soft stripping. Another advantage to having subs come in is we have 2 or 3 crews working at once, speeding up the process a little bit, as long as there's room. So yeah, after the roof's gone, and then we strip down all the soft strips done, and we strip down all the walls and the siding, and we start going after framing. And then, our site's a little video. You'll hopefully see here, like we got a lot going on. We've got the roofs all gone, getting walls down and getting down to the floor. Our sites are very clean. We're very well organized. Get a lot of compliments from neighbors on the whole process of how clean and actually quiet it is compared to machinery coming in. A lot less dust. We don't even remove windows until the whole interior of the house is stripped out usually, and all the sheetrock's gone and everything, so that we're not having dust blowing all through the neighborhoods and everything. Nailing is a big part of what we do. You salvage all the lumber, you got to pull all the nails if somebody wants to reuse it. So that's a air-powered denailing gun. It put it on the point of the nail, and a pin pops the nail out backwards. And plywood like that, you turn the pressure up on the air compressor and it'll shoot the nail clear out. If it's a big 2x4 or an old school nail that's 8 inches long, it might just pop it out enough to flip the board over and pull it down. It speeds up the process a lot. Makes it well worth it. There's some 1920s redwood 1x12s there. Those are at the store today, actually. So we're very well organized. Like I said, we get a lot of compliments from neighbors. We sort out all the metals throughout the project, haul them off in the end. We sort all the lumbers by dimensions and species on the project. If there's enough room, there's not always enough room. We have to change up how we do things every once in a while. Yeah, it's one of the probably more complicated parts of the job is keeping it all organized as it comes out and figuring out when it's going off the job and when you got enough to make a full load. And sometimes we're dispersing to different facilities and stuff, so you got to get all the materials out to go to one place at one time. A lot of coordination happens. At the end of the project, this is the materials inventory. So this is what Nicole usually does. She'll come on the job site before we get started removing stuff, and she'll inventory all the materials and put stickers on them that we're going to be salvaging. That helps our crew know what needs to be salvaged. There's a lot that doesn't get stickered that we just know we're supposed to be saving, but the bigger items all get a sticker on it. That's what we salvage. That's what it's all inventoried and itemized and numbered and everything so that it helps the flow at our store when the materials get there or wherever else we're delivering to. And then as we pull the stuff apart, we check it off the list and then inventory lumber as we're loading it. And then all those inventories, Nicole or I process and make them look nice and clean at the end. And that's what goes to the appraiser for your final actual evaluation of the tax section. And go back one more.
Nope.
Is that it? Am I
That's
too
it.
long?
That was
Okay.
all of them.
So the other one there was a materials tracking form for your waste audit information for your permits. And that's something we track every load that goes out. We save all receipts for the loads where they get dumped. And put all the quantities together on one spreadsheet at the end and send you all the receipts. So you have everything you need to turn into the building department, zero waste departments. And it sort of sums up what percentages of reuse and recycling we get out of the project.
Thank you, Brandon.
That's it. Thank you.
All right,
That's awesome.
Acapello Craftsman, Hans, take it away for us. Gotta unmute. There you go.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Perfect.
High tech over here. How's it going? My name is Hans Peterson. I'm an estimator for a company called Acapella Craftsman, headquartered out of Petaluma. And we install finished carpentry for the high-end residential market. Mostly we work in the city inside of San Francisco, but we also see quite a bit of work in the North Bay, in particular wine country, Sonoma and Napa Valley areas. But we also see projects in Marin County, East Bay, and we do have some presence in the South Bay as well. We estimate to two different types of clients, mostly general contractors, but we also estimate to casework providers or cabinet shops. And for GCs, we estimate both provide and install on all materials. And then for cabinets, obviously it's just install that we work directly with casework providers on. We do see a bit of reclaimed installations. We rarely supply materials for reclaim projects just because sourcing is, is what it is. So we normally just install. So I can't speak a whole ton to purchasing materials for that, but the most common product that we see is like a planking material, usually shiplap, sometimes TNG material. But what we find is that it's pretty difficult for us to estimate and to install based on the condition of the wood. It's a very inconsistent product for obvious reasons. Reclaim comes from all different areas and locations. So it's not the cheapest for us to install, where we have a lot more control over a traditional dimensional lumber. Let's see. And then we also do see some solid lumber applications where we've seen solid post beam and truss systems before. In particular, we had a project in Mill Valley that had a reclaimed beam system that was in it. And it was a finished ceiling. So we ended up having to spend just under 2 weeks to hollow out the backside of the beam so that we could create 2 scribe lines so that we could accurately install it to the ceiling without any gaps. It was pretty time consuming. Again, material provided by the general contractor. So as far as cost goes, for us, it's not the cheapest option in the world that we play in. As far as, just the labor pricing goes, it's pretty expensive. And then as far as material types, the beams that I'm talking about was a reclaimed white oak, which was, again, a really hard lumber. So a lot of time spent on getting that prepped to go into the ceiling. And then we regularly see fir products, and then on occasion we'll see some reclaimed cedar stuff. from a personal perspective, I have a little bit of experience on my own personal residence and also doing some installation professionally in the Seattle area. And I love Reclaim, but you do have to give up the quality control on it. But if you can do that, the story behind a Reclaim, which I've done a couple of different times. One interesting scenario was we took apart a wall that was lath and plaster and we salvaged all the lath pieces and turned it into a decorative wall, which was fun. And then we also see that shiplap siding that's a lot of times underneath a different product, more modern product, but it was installed back in the early 1900s. And we will salvage some of that and turn it into the backside of a bar or something like that. So Reclaim's a lot of fun, but in the world that we live in here at Acapella, the level of quality that we need to provide, it just ends up being expensive is all, but it's gorgeous. And a lot of times on some of the solid lumber applications that we see, we source that out to a company called Timber Creations, who I think is one of our speakers today. That's it for me, guys.
Perfect intro, Hans. Timber Creations, take it over, bud.
All right, everybody. Hey, thank you so much for having me out today. Everybody can hear me now? Can you hear me there? Am I on?
Yes, I'm muting so we don't have reverb. So yes, we
very
can
good.
hear you beautifully.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for having me again, and thank you for taking on this topic. I appreciate it. So my name's Leif Calvin. I've been a timber framer for over 30 years now here in the Bay Area. My company, I manufacture heavy timber components and buildings, specializing in traditional mortise and tenon joinery. And I think the first thing I want to kind of impress on you today is in the timber industry for using recycled material, which I've been doing for many, many years. I think the headliner is that you want to source first and then design. And when I mean design, I mean everything from engineering, architecture, and visual effect of what you're trying to accomplish. But don't get tied in on those until you get your source nailed down, because our industry has changed so much over the last few years. With that said, I think there's different ways to recycle heavy timber components. One is take a whole building. And the nice thing about traditional timber framing is that they just pull the nails out, or the pegs rather, the trunnels, and you can reuse a lot of this stuff and put the whole building back together as it was built. Here's a building that I did back in the early 90s, came from England. We put the whole thing back together. This was in 93. But most of the use is with just individual timbers. So you find an individual timber, you remill it to the size you need, you bring a grader in, we get it stamped. So we've got all the engineering, and then you use it as you need it, as you would any other material. Now, the nice thing is then you just build, like say, this is recycled material, and you just have fun with it. Something like this, again, you get the natural look of the recycled material comes through really well. Sometimes you get some pieces that don't have character at all. They just look like nice fresh wood, but they're dry and recycled. Sometimes you get pictures from your clients saying they want to match something that's old. So we use reclaimed material, but when we resaw it, it's all fresh and new. And then you can stain it down to as you wish, kind of a thing. The other way to use recycled material is with a natural patina. You don't remill it, you just use it as is and have fun with it. So this is some structures, wineries up in Napa, took over a year to source this material, but the sources were readily available back then, and we could get them graded in here in my yard just as is. And then we built our structure around this. Then that previous one was all Douglas fir. These are some oak beams that we would bring in from the East Coast in the yard, grade them, use them all structurally. This is a project up in Napa. Again, I'd grade the beams. We'd get them engineered, used all structurally. When they're not structural, then we go to acapella and they install them. And we'll show you some of that later. So hopefully I'm not skipping through that. These slides are showing up on your end. Sometimes I go a little too fast. So again, using it structurally, here's a application where the owner wanted just red oak, or I'm sorry, white oak, but of course you just can't specify that. It's hard to find all that. And then once we start designing, we end up using all kinds of, not just oak, but the big ridge beam here was a last minute change, and I had to put a structural tie rod in it, and that's a piece of beech. But most people come in and can't tell the difference. So getting tied into one species sometimes isn't the best thing. This is a sample of just non-structural. As you can see, nothing's holding those up. The ceiling above is holding it up. These are getting harder to use. One caveat I would say, no matter how often you tell a client, hey, we're not going to have mortises and you can have old character, and they're like, yes, 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 beware. Your stakeholders will change their mind afterwards, and then I come back in and have to plug all these holes. With that said, nowadays, I'm going to get back to my main point, which is source first, then design. This is a stack of material photo that I took a few years back, and it's hard to even find a stack that looks this good anymore, anywhere. And we usually bring sources from the East Coast and all over, whether it's recycled Doug fir or oak or any species. Our supplies are diminishing significantly, and we just don't have those, nor do we have a lot of the barns that are taken down. We can recycle the whole building anymore. They're just getting fewer and few between. So again, I'll just state it in a different way. Don't design first and then source. Go to your source first, or else you're going to end up with something like this, which we end up doing quite a bit, which is fresh material. We hew, we put patina on it, and it looks like recycled material, but it's not. Then there's projects. This last year, we've done a few jobs now where we have a nice supply of old piling that we've sourced out of the San Francisco Bay. They were buried in the mud since 1920. We've got a few cants where we've remilled them down, and we use them and design them as they are. So I'll go to my engineer and say, all right, I've got this sizes. This is what I have. This is the grade we have. How do we make it work? And we go from there. And that's turned out pretty nicely. We've just finished a nice barn, had a topping off party for it just last week up in Occidental. And this was a barn that burned down. It was originally a timber frame built in the 70s by a few old hippies that were out there when we did the topping off party. It was great to meet them. And here's part of the structure of that barn. But again, this is recycled material out of the Golden Gate, or not out of the Golden Gate, out of the San Francisco Bay. As you can see up here, this is a beam from the Golden Gate Bridge that I was able to get my engineer to. I made a shop drawing of it. We used it as a principal member, put a king post on it to hold the ridge. So it's an anchor beam holding the ridge. Works quite well with all the other recycled timber in there. On the inside, we even used all the beams to build the stair. And that's about it. So that's my presentation for the day. Again, I think the headliner is source first and design later. And don't get too bogged down in your design until you get your source figured out. And that way you can really have a successful project. Thanks again.
Thank you. That was awesome. All right. So obviously that was a lot of information, great photos, great videos. Opening it up to questions. Feel free. If you have a question for one of our speakers up here, let us know. Obviously they're right here. So questions, comments, thoughts.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is towards greening. I'm in the world of interior design developments, and currently right now I have 2 commercial offices, and it's interesting. They're wanting to pull things out, but also get rid of the office furniture. And I want to know, can you help with that as well in being able to upcycle that? Because they're looking to place it somewhere that they can, get benefit from it or help somebody else. It just feel horrible to throw it out. And one of the offices is 7,000 square feet. And the one they're working with is now 2,000. So I wanted to know about that, and I also want to know how far you go in the Bay Area. Do you have cutoff points? We have a project up in Tahoe, something small that may not be, but they do have strategic partners, because this whole mindset can't just be here in Marin. And I know we're talking Marin, but like we're all now so all over the place that if we carry that message, I think it's great. So that'd be great.
So the question from the audience, just it's hard for the Zoomers here, was about office, commercial buildings, having a lot of extra furniture, things like that they need to find homes for and redo their thing. And then also kind of the boundaries territory that Green Lennox works.
So in terms of the office material, you can always email us. We've done Clorox, we've done Dolby, done 300,000 square feet. So that was our biggest. It's not easy placement. It depends on the, what the materials are. And I might even just refer them to their future, like whoever's designing, or in your case, it's you, but sourcing the furniture. The furniture manufacturer might actually have a program that does the placement for you. So you might want to check with the manufacturer first, or the dealer. Sometimes they have like a firm that does it. But like we're bidding on a hotel right now in Corte Madera. So we'll be donating the majority of the furniture inside that hotel to homeless agencies. So it's something we love to do. It's like Christmas, giving stuff away. We do little shopping days where we'll invite nonprofits to shop. So we'll put together like a whole package for people. Okay, here's a cart. Go just get whatever you want. So then that way it gets rid of as much as we can without charging the client. We just, get the nonprofits in there for free. But we do charge for, like, if it's a really big project. We had to move Dolby out in like
7 days.
Yeah.
For a 4-story building.
Yeah, that was nuts. So we got as much as we could.
2 tractor trailers and 3 26-foot box trucks. in there.
Yeah.
7 days. So-
Yeah. When we did Clorox and Google, we donated stuff to the San Francisco and the Oakland Zoo. They redid their surgery departments, and I mean, it can get exciting.
About 14 shipping containers went overseas to Jamaica on Clorox.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you coordinate all that in containers and getting it off?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we have partners that do the international stuff.
Oh, we didn't hear that.
Yeah.
So those are unusual jobs. We don't get them a lot, but when we get them, they are fun. And then in terms of where we go, we generally are cut off in San Francisco and Oakland. We don't really go any further south than that, but we started, one of our partners will do that. So we'll consider it. And then as far as Tahoe is
Yeah,
concerned.
we entertain Tahoe.
Yes, you're snowboarding.
Couple of our guys are. But the reuse people, they kind of have operations all around the state, so you can also get in touch with them. It's hard to find contractors that'll do Tahoe. But yeah, I mean, if it's a cool project, I don't think our guys would mind going out to Tahoe, but it would, be a little bit expensive because the housing, that's the biggest thing, staying up there for weeks or whatever. So.
I have a friend that's a reporter for the IGN. You should.
Anybody else?
Other questions from Zoom or in the room? Here you go, Claire.
I have 2 questions. One is, you mentioned before about lumber staying underground from 1920. I'm just curious about why we don't get termite invasion.
Oh, that's Bay. That's Bay. Go ahead, Lee.
I was gonna say that that material was buried in the San Francisco Bay, so it's in mud and very salty. So once that's that deep and you don't have air, if there's no air, you don't really get any deterioration with the termites and the bugs.
Yeah.
My second question has to do with how can we around the table help endorse getting you as a source for recycled materials in each one of the building departments?
I don't know. I'm working with the code officials to try to get kind of a workaround so we don't have to do an ordinance or something like that. 'Cause they're like, really, it's just paperwork. And so if they, and I've already had a meeting with them and they're interested. They're surprised. I was really surprised. They were all totally for it. So if I can get to the next step, I just need time, you know, we're like, I don't dress up like this normally. I'm usually in Carhartt. And so we don't have a lot of time, but I'm on the board of Marin Builders, and that's kind of opened up a lot of avenues for us to, you know, talk to, as are you.
Well, sometimes I just get the impression they just default to Marin's recycling because they just don't know anything.
Yeah.
They're
Yes,
just not
that is
aware of
true.
it.
That's an
Yeah.
They're just
absolute
not
fact.
aware of it. So my question had to do with what can we do to help endorse you to make them aware
I
of
mean,
it?
just let people know what we
They
do.
would I think they'd be willing to put you on their list if they just knew.
Yeah, we're on some of the lists. I think, you know, the best way for us is word of mouth. We just don't have a big budget for advertising. But I think, you know, yeah, I think we're on some of the cities' lists, and some of the cities' lists are so old, they have the away station on, which is, the away station was in Fairfax and it's gone now, so. Just getting to the right people and having the time, but yeah, word of mouth is the best way.
There's a lot of legislation for the industry in the Bay Area,
Yeah.
trying to promote what we do around here.
Okay, one of my last questions is, I remember when, you know, we all had to start going green, and how it was, some laws were passed, but it was up to the cities to enforce them. And then eventually each year, the municipality, they started making what used to be extra and getting points for becoming the standards. Do you foresee this whole deconstruction and everything kind of moving in that route? Because they're talking about it now, but it's a matter of it becoming into municipalities and then becoming the enforcement, and then changing their codes, which become standards. And if they start to do that, they've got to have solutions. Like, you guys are the only gate in town.
Yeah.
It's like, how can they push all over when they don't have the solutions for the GCs to comply?
Yeah.
And do you see them being recognized as you're talking to the city and others, like this is getting addressed, and we need others out there? As much as we'd love to do everything with you, but you just can't feed the masses like this, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So the question from in the room was essentially about jurisdictions or ordinance, how, you know, the last 20 years or so has been, you know, this Go Green campaign and, you know, Title 24 compliances, but do we see more places like Palo Alto happening in the deconstruction to help offset some of that?
I think so. I mean, you know, San Francisco and it's in Oakland's, their climate action plan. San Francisco's working on it as we speak. I talked to these people. We have a Bay Area deconstruction work group that meets quarterly. And the goal was originally to try to just get everybody in a room. So we all can talk about what we're doing, and so people don't reinvent the wheel. Palo Alto actually happened kind of in secret. A few of us were invited to their planning, and they had a huge push from the transfer station that they use in the landfill that they use in San Jose, and they were behind it. And so that's where that ordinance is not necessarily geared towards reuse, it's geared towards source separation for recycling, which is a little different. Recycling means that the wood gets burned and turned into energy, or it gets turned into mulch. So there might be some little bit of salvage happening on the Palo Alto jobs, but
But at this rate, where you're talking about, at this level where we are, we're probably years off before this really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like it took probably 10 years before all we've got going on is mainstream for the way we build in our science now.
Yeah.
So it's, that's so depressing.
Salvaging and saving stuff has been done for generations, you know, but as you becoming an industry,
Probably
it's
10 years
growing,
old.
it's definitely growing, it's grown a lot in the last 16 years I've been involved in
Yeah.
it, and becoming a little more mainstream. But I was in Montana promoting this, and like, nobody had a clue. And then I thought, I'm moving to California, and everybody's gonna know this, and I'm gonna go to work for some big company. And ended up
You're
being-
in.
being Nicole and starting our company, which
We're in.
we're in now, like, yeah, it wasn't here when I got here, like I thought it would be, so.
Yeah.
and
That's,
like,
that's
they
sad,
did
that's
that.
quantifiable, how much is going
Yeah.
to be missed.
Definitely a lot of movement from everybody that's in the industry to make it more mainstream.
It's that
Yeah.
word of mouth, getting it out
You
there.
know, Portland, Oregon worked like probably 3 years, I think, creating their ordinance. And they literally did make sure that there were certification programs to train deconstruction companies. They made sure there was enough stores to handle the flow of materials for what they were gonna
They
implement.
gave out grants.
They gave out grants, they did all kinds of training, like they did a lot of research and a lot of work to make it come together. And then they implemented the program homes 1916 and older to begin with. So, because if they did all homes, they probably would have been able to handle the flow of materials.
So is there some reason as you're talking to municipalities and stuff that they don't look to these other cities that have done it successfully to use a platform and just not reinvent the wheel and lay it out?
Yeah. Portland's definitely-
Red tape.
Yeah.
It's a lot of red tape,
Yeah.
but honestly, the biggest issue is our 65% rule. It doesn't work. It's totally fake. They're not actually recycling 65%. It's more like 30, if that, and that's if you're doing concrete. And it's how our system is designed in California, and we're actually working at the state level with, on this, like, this is the other hat that we wear on the waste side. With the Resource Recovery Organization, we have a technical council, and that's what we're working on. But the problem is, there's literally, you know, everybody knows Cal Green. There's literally one person at the state level, and he has 0 staff that decides what that percentage and what the waste is going to be in Cal Green. And so I literally asked him, I was like, what's, you know, what can I have you and your staff do to like get this to be more mainstream, and how do we, you know, get higher than 85%? How do we actually make it 65 at least? And he said, what staff? And so basically I said, well, so do you want us to come up with what it should be? And he said, yes. So that's the good news, is that the one guy that works at the state level that affects all of us when it comes to Cal Green. So we're hoping by 20, so it's 2023 is when the next Cal Green will change. That's when we're hoping to change it. And so 65% will likely go away, and it'll be more prescriptive of what to do. And make that happen and make it correct is the question, and get it done by then. So.
Question in the back?
I think you kind of already answered it. Looking at the next 5 years, on your question, which you just discussed.
Yeah.
What do you think is the next 5, 10 years would be necessary for that market transformation to make it mainstream in your eye? And that's just not the green mix, but also leaf and on the.
Well, I think, you know, one of the things we're looking at is getting investors, because Brandon and I are just too small. You know, we're 2 people that have 6 people working for us. And, you know, Recology is a huge billion-dollar company with contracts. I think we need to start making, you know, this a whole different industry and how we run it. You know, I think construction needs to change a little bit, and how it approaches building. You need to just start designing for reuse or future reuse. I mean, it sounds like Leaf's already doing that, you know, but those are 100-year-old buildings and older. So like I said, the 90s, everything past the 90s isn't reusable. It's the only thing we can reuse is the interior finishes, the cabinets and stuff. Those are great. But structurally, everything's trash, literal trash. It's not even going to be recyclable because we can't even pry it apart. So I think changing how we build and codes on the building side, that's our really tough point.
Make every effort to build buildings that are gonna last 50 to 100 years or whatever, and the reality is we are stripping out houses that have been remodeled 5 years ago.
Yeah,
You know, or
Yeah.
by the same person. A
yeah,
lot of the times,
Yeah.
or, a lot of the structures we're taking down, we do take down 100-year-old structures, but we also take down a lot of them are in that 30 to 40-year range.
yeah. Yeah, that floor that we showed you, that was in Belvedere. It was Iroku, which is like a rare Japanese hardwood,
Oh, geez.
tropical hardwood or something like that. I mean, I don't even know.
We
But
had to cut it into about 12 by 12 sections to get them to fry out.
yeah, it was awful. And then they had to redo the whole hydronic system. Luckily, they saved, the tanks and stuff, but. So I think, changing our mindset, from being extreme consumers. And actually quality is probably like, you see what Lee builds. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it looks like the Notre Dame, attic, for God's sakes. It's beautiful. So changing our what we expect. And maybe, downsizing the size of things and increasing the quality. Frankly, everything in a house, you've seen like Diane Sawyer's has a show about how everything in an American house is made in China. And how do you actually source from the United States and do it? I think COVID has shown us a different way of life and a different way of living, a different way of purchasing things. Our priorities, getting our priorities kind of reorganized. So I think there's a lot of hope, there. We just have to change how we do things. That's the hardest part. I mean, like Starbucks is going to start carrying reusable cups. That's huge, like very, very huge.
I was just going to add that there's a question that was submitted quite a while back online, and it ties in with this whole discussion. I'm actually a managing partner of Arizon's Design Build, and so I can kind of speak to this question, which was how would you define design build? And I think this really plays a role in what we're talking about here, where it's like what I like to call, everyone has these cockamamie schemes that they just want their vision and they don't care like if it's extra effort or it's not the cheapest thing or it's not the most efficient thing, but they're committed to this sustainability values. And so I think design build is like one way to kind of adhere to those values without, you start with one designer entity and then you start looking for builders and you're getting all this pushback of like getting everybody on board from the get-go. And so then owners are really only dealing kind of with the primary entity, and it's up to them to get all of their kind of consultants in place. So that's like how I would define at least our business is we start off knowing what our strengths are as builders, what materials we work really well with, for instance, steel and milling, our own kind of handcrafted millwork and cabinetry and stuff like that. And then it kind of ties in with what Blake was saying is like find the materials you're going to work with, and then you are kind of crafting the vision and the approach to how you actually build a thing without kind of having to force somebody into or like getting pushback along the way. So I see like a really big strength in the design build, at least for residential, especially. Commercial building maybe a little bit more big, but yeah, that's one strength I can say. And then maybe a drawback of like having a design build company is that because we are generalists, we're not exactly, we don't have like a very specialized skills and say if you want like a really elaborate design or like highly architectural, I think then that's where we would have to just start collaborating with people who are more specialized. But it can all happen. You can find kind of the primary, get on board with the ultimate vision, and then bring in consultants to fill in the more specialized gaps. So.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's how you get.
Well, I
your-
really,
Yeah.
oh, we got one more question? Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Well, one is, I think, materials are too cheap. Materials cost too little. So labor's too expensive, materials cost too much. I mean, other way around, labor's really expensive. And so there's no, the labor cost to saving material ratio is just not there. And until materials get more valuable, legislating people doing it is gonna be like, gonna be difficult because people will always look for a cheaper way to deal with that. That was just my short comment on why you don't see a lot of salvage material going on job sites.
Yeah.
The other is I've got a job going on right now. We've got all this, like the sheathing underneath the roof is all 1x8s. It's nice material, but I saw that all the places that you take material to are all maxed out. So what's happening with this?
We'll make room.
Yeah.
For 1x8, we'll make room.
And then, you know, and there's walls that were, you know, this is before plywood was the backer. It's all 1x6 T&G dug fir. It's lined the interior walls, because then they put 1/4 inch glue on top of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's walls worth of this 1x6 T&G. So I'm very curious, like the stuff, what is happening with this new material? What are people doing? I mean, are you, like this, like he's saying, like somebody said, he says, find the material and then create the project with the material. So is that what's happening with all the stock? Somebody has to go there and be like, I think I can use this. That's a.
Yeah.
That's a.
Yeah, I mean, we get, did you say it's 2x6 or 1x6?
a
Or 1x, yeah. I mean, we can sell 1x T&G all day. It just goes, flies out the door. So people use it for just about everything. We're kind of perfectly placed in Sonoma. Our store is in Sonoma, and we have so many people that do DIY. We also have contractors that are working on their own projects, or that are working on wineries where, you know, there's a lot of plating going on. But I think, oh yeah, Sonoma County, yeah. So, but it's where, like, Sonoma County is very happy to receive Marin's trash. Because it's amazing material, what comes out of Marin, especially like Mill Valley. The picture that we showed, that 1x12, we are selling like the whole, I think not even the whole lot of it. But to a house in Oakland, they're gonna use it for their siding again. It's, you know, old growth redwood. It's solid 1 inch by 12, full solid 12 inches. And it's gonna be like $5,000 sale, you know? So,
A lot of our stores like ours are running at capacity. We're
Yeah.
constantly rearranging and reorganizing, assessing what we have and trying to promote things to sell faster. It's a constant game for us with the materials part of it, and trying to figure out how maybe we get into a bigger building someday and more property. And like, this is what most of these stores are going through. I mean, in reality, it'd be nice if they were a little more local to every town, you know, or each bigger size population or whatever. Like, we don't always like the fact that we got to haul all our materials going back to Santa Rosa from San Francisco.
yeah,
Or to Oakland, if we go to the reduced people or Urban Ore or somebody like that to donate the materials and drop them off. Like, it's a haul for us to get these materials anywhere. You know, what's the rural and green building is sourced from like 100 miles or 500 or something like that. Like,
Keep saying
we're
bigger.
doing the right thing, but we're also transporting this stuff quite a ways. Salinas was our best job ever. Like, literally, we did sell like 50% of the materials on site.
Wow.
Right to neighbors. Like,
So
in the first day we were there taking stuff apart, we got swarmed with neighbors. What are you doing? What's going on? Where's everything going?
That's Salinas for
I
you.
started making lists and numbers and what people wanted, making calls and sending materials down the roads.
Yeah.
So some of them on machinery, some of them on the back of the truck, some of them we carried across the road. So.
yeah, the guy from the, it was from the Lance, not the garden store, right? He showed up with his forklift one day.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Pretty much met most of Salinas in one 1 month we were there taking this property apart.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just curious in terms of cost comparison. I work as an interior designer. Like if I were to suggest to a client to go with reused wood versus new wood for a remodel, I'm sure one of the first questions that's gonna come up is like, well, what's the, how much is that gonna cost?
Yeah.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah. Well, I think it just depends. For instance, a 2x4 of old growth redwood is gonna be, like an 8-footer is gonna be like $25. But an old growth, redwood piece is pretty hard to find. So an equivalent might be mahogany or something like that. That's $125 per stick. So it just depends on like, if you're gonna be doing super high end, I would say that reclaim can a lot of times be cheaper, but there's gonna be a little labor involved in making that 2x4. But you still, it depends on where you're sourcing materials from and what you're making. But, I think they pointed out that it is harder to work with reclaimed, but not necessarily because the material is harder to work with, although there's a few limitations, but it's mainly because it's sourcing, finding enough of it. So that's what we're trying to do, having enough of, we call it cooperation, instead of, and like or co-opetition or with people that do what we do, so that we can refer.
Database or something.
Yeah, and so that, okay, I can get you, maybe 300 square feet and these guys can get you another 5.
Just like a collective database that you can see, okay, like these guys have, 20 of these and that, that other guy has another 10.
Yes,
And so now everybody working together versus against.
yeah, right.
Just obviously different locations.
Yeah, and
Spread out.
and I think also too, just finding out from whoever, everybody's got the guy that they use to do their trim or, whether they want to work with this material, because maybe they've never been asked before. But when we take stuff apart, we can see like an era, and we can see like 3 or 4 different companies made all the trim or all the paneling for houses, in the 1920s. There's 3 different companies that made it all, and they used, some of them used different types of wood or whatever. But I think that if we start making trends happen, we had white cabinets were a trend for a while, right? And then 2015s, right? And now that's changing, and now I don't even know if we're back to walnut cabinets now, but these trends start with designers. They start with design build too. You're the ones that are saying, this is what's hot right now, and we should want this. So maybe you say, this is what's hot right now. But before you do, make sure your guy will do it. Try it on something small first, and make sure that it works for you. Make sure it works for the gal or the guy who's making it, and that they want to try it, because I think that's really where it comes from. It comes from the crews being capable and the designers, being interested.
So we need to wrap it up, but Nicole and Brandon are going to hang out. So feel free to ask some other questions. Thank you for everybody on Zoom. Hopefully the audio worked out pretty well for everybody. Thank you to Hans, Left, and Green Lennox. You guys are great. This was really informative. Thank you so much. Really loved everything I learned today. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Very much like to put your attention to take pictures.